Hi and welcome to MyCTOfriend, the place where non-technical founders build successful startups by improving their tech management skills. I'm Amaury and today I'm going to answer a question from Ronan, the product director of a growing startup in the transport industry. His question is, how can a startup build a high-standard SaaS software for large companies? Before answering this question, let's add a bit of context. Ronan and his team recently developed a new solution. This solution went through the pilot phase and now needs to be deployed for large companies. But large companies' expectations are usually higher than those of startups. So to make it through, let's see what high expectations entail and how to achieve them. Reaching high standard means providing the reliability and the security required to protect your customers' interests. There are literally hundreds of certifications and you will not need all of them, of course. The good news is that by applying best practices, you will become compliant with most of them. But that is going to require some work for sure. This channel is not called MyCTOfriend because I'm not a Chief Information Security Officer. But I can definitely give you a few principles that are worth following and that will help you live up to large companies' expectations. One of the best known rules is to give every individual access to their own data, with the ability to modify or delete it. It came up recently with a GDPR regulation. Next, the software quality will always depend on software testing. So having test process before publishing software in production is a requirement. These days, we talk a lot about continuous deployment and continuous integration, which consists to deploy new features of your application after performing automatic tests. That's great and I highly recommend these principles, but they are not required to reach high quality standard. What is a requirement is to have a well-defined process where your developers deliver a specific version of your product. Your product team evaluates the new version of the software and they also run or delegate software testing. And a dedicated production team deploys the application and keep it up running 24/7. Finally, a customer support team handles customers' requests. Behind that quality assurance process, there are several recommendations to consider like controlling your employees. Most of the security issues are usually because of bad account management. So when an employee leaves your organization, you should have a script that removes all access they might have. So by controlling your employees, I mean physical access to your office, password renewal policies, and security training for your employees as well. Another rule is to log everything. Whenever an intrusion has been performed by a hacker, the first thing to do is to analyze what happened. Then, fix the vulnerabilities and correct the eventual impact of the intrusion. None of these are possible without logs. If you don't know what logs are, they are just simple text files that where a new line is added for every request, changes, connections, or any events that took place on the server or on the software. Let's talk about backups now. I recently came across a startup that had to perform a backup restoration. Unfortunately, they realized that the backups were erased every time they loaded a new version. It still works as a backup for a set version. But if you need to restore a file that has been deleted 2 days ago, these type of backups are useless. So double check that your backups are stored in a second hosting provider and with multiple versions. And this next one is the most obvious, but I still think the most important. External connections to your infrastructure should only come from secure connection with multiple authentications layer. A good standard will be deploying a VPN to control which computer are allowed to connect to your production network. VPN, I mean Virtual Private Network, is a secure network connection usually established over the internet. Then what I would recommend is to use a Bastion server. A Bastion server should be the only server accessible through your VPN. Then only people working for you might use an individual account to access to this server. Once connected, your team will get access to the real servers or database where you store software and user informations. And last but not least will be the application layer or the server authentication. Another good practice after controlling authorized access to your server will be to search for unauthorized access and test your application's behavior in high traffic. These type of tests are very important and lead the team to improve their development methodologies. Talking about security brings me to development best practices. Young developers are often the one responsible for security breaches. So to help your team develop a better application, they need to go through the OWASP project at owasp.org website that will enable them to better understand security in software development and secure your applications. And once you've done everything possible to secure your application, the last things to do is to put in place a web application firewall. A web application firewall is like an antivirus. It will analyze every connection to your application and detect suspicious behavior. If someone tries to send unusual code or log in hundreds of times in a single minute, the web application firewall will deny any similar connection for a certain amount of time. That will dramatically increase your solution's security. Finally, after building a secure software and infrastructure, setting up backups, etc., you will need a clear procedure to restore your application in the event of something happen. Like if the data center where your infrastructure is run out of the electricity, or if there is an earthquake, etc. Data centers do their best, but life is just unpredictable. That's why I recommend you to have a backup in a second hosting provider. This way, you can rebuild your entire infrastructure with updated data in the quickest way possible. Here is where the disaster recovery plan comes to play. It's the entire procedure to build everything from scratch, restoring the last application and available things data. Now we covered the main principle to reach high standard. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel because in the next video I will go deeper in the process of building the disaster recovery plan, so you can better secure and sell your solution to bigger companies. And if you'd like to be notified when that happens, just go ahead and click that notification bell. In the meantime, if like Ronan you have a specific question for your project, just go ahead and ask on myctofriend.co/ask. I will do my best to answer your question by video or to redirect you to any existing content that will answer it. Also make sure to go through our other content on myctofriend.co to learn more from real startup growth experience and better manage your startup development. Waiting for your question, I look forward to seeing you in other videos. Cheers.